Well, Mary on Netflix felt like a weird movie to me, and my biggest problem with it is not the fact that it diverts so much from the biblical source material. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Mary on Netflix reads, "In this timeless coming-of-age story..." That should have been a hint right there. In this timeless coming-of-age story, Mary is shunned following an otherworldly conception and forced to flee when Herod's insatiable thirst for power ignites a murderous pursuit for the newborn. Okay, so I'm going to give some spoilers, but this kind of story I think is more about how it's told than what the big story beats are. The spoilers I'm going to give are more incidental stuff that got added in. Half of this movie is about Mary's miraculous conception, I guess, which comes in the form of another. It's a story that's not unheard of, certainly in Scripture, where a woman past her childbearing years is miraculously able to give birth, and that child, there's something significant about that child in terms of Israel's history. So Mary turns out another one of those, they're saying. That's not, of course, in the Bible, but they're going with that here. And then after that is her training at the Jerusalem Temple's Hogwarts School for the Bene Gesserit, something. I don't know. It had an interesting vibe to it that felt also like a little beat from The Sound of Music, almost like how do you solve a problem like Maria, but instead of sung, we just kind of see a little snippet of that kind of play out. Interesting. Eventually, Mary and Joseph are betrothed, so we do get to the biblical narrative, and Mary is visited by the angel Gabriel. Jesus is miraculously conceived. Meanwhile, Herod, played fantastically by Anthony Hopkins, I'll get back to that, Herod is growing increasingly paranoid and unhinged and deadly to others around him as a result, deadly ultimately to Israel. And eventually Herod's actions put the young couple and the baby Jesus in danger, and we get some action scenes, including Joseph fighting off a soldier and Mary jumping out of a burning building. I'm not making that up. I found out that this script underwent numerous rewrites. Not necessarily numerous writers, I think maybe just one writer, but numerous rewrites from what I understand. And if that's true, that makes a lot of sense of what I was seeing here, what I was experiencing and feeling about this. There are so many little moments and beats that felt contributed by either different writers or by entirely different passes in the writing process that had different agendas each time. And the result is a story that felt to me like an almost, at times, arbitrary assortment of events and characters. Now, to be clear, I am not putting on my Christian Bible nerd spectacles and saying this is bad because it gets this and that wrong compared to the Bible. My problem is that the inventive elements that were added don't feel to me like parts of a unified vision that are working together, contributing to each other to tell an interesting story that builds and has a sequence that makes sense in terms of how it's developing the character of Mary. And I also don't feel like the writers honestly wanted to tell a kind of story that is most suited to the source material. Mary's life is, what we know of it, is suited to maybe a couple different types of stories, but the type of story being gone for here, it's a major square peg in round hole stuff, I think. Modern storytelling formulas like the coming-of-age plot that the IMDb synopsis mentions, like action sequence conventions such as jumping off out of a burning building, themes of actualizing your own internal power, which are hinted at in the trailer for this, that where like one woman is telling Mary, you are so much more powerful than you think you are, something like that. That's a very kind of modern idea. And those things don't spring out of the data that we have about Mary. They have to be brought back from modern storytelling and forced onto Mary's story. And that is what I think happened here. It's not that you can't take those kinds of modern storytelling conventions and put them in a historical context, or even about a person that actually lived in history, but some people that lived in history, some settings in some cultures are going to be more suited to bringing back these modern tropes, conventions, ideas than others. And I don't think Mary's story and setting are conducive to bringing those elements back. And I don't think you needed to bring those elements back in order to make this a compelling story. To be sure, you do have to fill in a lot of gaps. You do have to be pretty inventive if you're going to make an hour and a half to 2 hour movie about Mary, the mother of Jesus. But I think that the writers seemed unaware of the fascinating drama that could already be extracted by giving more attention to the cultural context of Mary's story, of Israel, the culture, the virtues, the values that they were living by, that they were driven by. Now, there was some of that, to be sure, but it was mostly just kind of mentioned and we didn't really dig into, okay, well, why would the people of Israel care so much about this? There's so much about lineages and waiting for the Messiah, looking for the Messiah, their misconceptions about what the Messiah would be, their correct conceptions about what family line it would come from and what ramifications that would have for people that were part of the tribe that the Messiah was supposed to come from. I mean, there's so much potential there in terms of how people were feeling about different family groups and so much that could have been drawn from the source material that was neglected. Instead of, let's see, what are my notes saying? Yeah. If we compare what Mary was driven by to how she kind of seems to tick in this movie, instead of Mary's story being about the power and strength she possesses, which was affirmed to her multiple times in this movie, in the data we have about Mary, we see her pointing to Yahweh, the God of Israel, amazed that he was doing something that was going to powerfully upset authority structures and be a rescuing act of mercy for all of Israel. In this movie, she is written as humble and pious, but not as someone with this vibrant prayer life and thought life before the Lord. And as an example of that, I just want to go to Luke chapter 1, 46 through 55. Mary says, this is the ESV, and Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his offspring forever." She has such this rich awareness of her people, of her culture, of God's interactions with the people of Israel, his promises for the people of Israel. That is all just in her thinking about this situation. It's in her prayer. Oh man, there's so much. What amazing richness to her thought life to think and pray like this, as we see in Luke. And I think that what we can glean of what made Mary tick in this passage is way more unique and interesting than the standard good-hearted female hero who is learning to become strong. I want to know how a 14, 16, however old she was, girl has that kind of rich thought life and prayer life. Man, there's so much that could be explored about how a girl that age is having those kinds of thoughts that are that rich. Just amazing richness to her thought life to think and pray like that. We also miss out on Joseph wrestling. I know the movie's not about him, but I mean, like, a great point of drama would be him wrestling with the news that Mary is pregnant and really taking a visit from an angel that changed his mind. Now, he does wrestle with the news a little bit, but not according to the biblical account. We don't see in this movie him resolving to divorce her, as the biblical accounts say. He's basically said, I'm going to just quietly end this betrothal and put it behind me. You could have had a 20-minute plot line of him wrestling with that, praying about it, maybe confiding in somebody, one or two people. I don't know, but I mean, there could be so much, or maybe, have a great actor performance when he's listening to other people talking about the values of the culture and realizing, oh my gosh, if they knew about Mary, my life would be over, her life would be over. There's so much drama and opportunity for great performances from the actor playing Joseph, wrestling with the ramifications of this news. He just found out Mary is pregnant. And they just don't take it in that direction. I mean, it's ultimately this thing is built to be drama, and they didn't go in that direction. And I think that is the strength of this. So let's see here. Yeah, great drama, I think, can come from world building that establishes the values and cultures of its people, but so much of that was sacrificed for the sake of, as I said, these familiar modern tropes. The source material lends itself, I think, to drama. If you want to come up with like a modern categorization, historical, supernatural fantasy drama. Had some cool kind of fantasy elements of it, in the way they portrayed the angels as these kind of supernatural beings and stuff. And I think you could do some cool Hollywood type stuff with that and still have this historical drama that's very grounded in a rich world that is alien to our own. The source material does not lend itself to action, adventure, coming of age, self-actualization. And I'm being a little bit too harsh on it to overly summarize it that way. I don't mean to, but I mean, to the degree it goes in that direction, it's, I think, weak. By playing against its strengths, it just feels forced anytime that it's doing that, and it does that a lot in this movie. Now, there is a great short film that could be edited from this one, and that's a short film called Herod. Anthony Hopkins. I mean, he's Anthony Hopkins, and I'm not just saying that because I feel like I should because he's Anthony Hopkins, but because I watched his performance in this. There is so much subtext. I mean, he is conveying so much more than merely the words that are coming out of his mouth. And that's what great actors do. And I feel like all his scenes kind of have their own plot thread that's running through, and you could just have all of his scenes in there. And then because audiences are familiar with the basic story of Mary, Joseph, birth of Jesus stuff, you could just have some brief scenes, maybe with almost no dialogue or no dialogue at all, that just establish the passage of time. You cut to Mary and Joseph. What's going on? Where are we at in the whole heading toward the birth of Jesus story? Just use that to give us a frame of reference, and then back to Herod and his spiraling down into madness. I mean, that was really great stuff, great scenes. That was the thing that kept me probably sitting through the movie, other than the fact that I was like, I got to do this review. The rest of the actors are fine. It's not that I feel like, everyone's bad and Anthony Hopkins is the only one that's good, but it is a night and day difference to me. As far as stunts and visuals, it's not a movie, even though it injects action that is totally unneeded. It's not built on action and visual effects. There's some conservative visual effects with the angels that I thought were nice and cool and kind of stylistic, moderately so, but still welcome. But late in the movie, there's some fake-looking fire effects, some suspicious CG blood blooming effects when someone gets stabbed and they add a little CG blood spreading, on the wound. Nothing exciting really. Okay, so themes. Is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation after watching this movie? It's such an interesting one. For a blatantly religiously sourced story, it seems a little afraid of God talk. They skirt around it sometimes in confusing ways, these characters wouldn't have if you're looking at the biblical account. I mean, I just read what Mary prayed, and that's got all kinds of talk in there that we would not have heard given in this movie with how it was written. It feels to me like someone in the production process said, let's show non-religious people that Mary is admirable. I think we can do that without grating their nerves with too much God stuff, I think that a lot of Christians may feel tempted to sort of virtue signal by slamming this movie, particularly for the ways that it diverts from the Bible. That's why I wanted to make a point of saying my beef with it is not that it diverted from the source material. It's that the ways that it did, the routes it chose to go, just didn't work for me. They were just weak. And as a separate note, if they would have adhered to the source material, I think, and gone toward a different genre, they could have played to the strength of the source material more. But those are two different issues. What I'm concerned is that, that I might be coming across that way, like I'm just wagging my finger, oh, naughty people for not treating the Bible right and stuff like that. I don't have any expectations, like that, and I don't need to make a stink about that. Honestly, I think we're better off not giving non-Christians who read our little comments and tweets and stuff like that reason to think that, another reason to think that Christians are always angry about stuff. I'm not angry about this movie at all. I think that if someone watches this and wants to talk about it with you, great. But I don't think it's worth making a stink over, and certainly not, worth watching just to find out what's bad and wrong about it in your mind. Honestly, this week, guys, I wanted to make content about something else, but some unexpected stuff derailed my schedule so that I couldn't, because that would have required much more time investment to do the way I wanted to compared to watching this movie and making some comments about it. So I decided to do this review because I had a weekly review content slot to fill to meet expectations. But if I weren't doing that, I probably wouldn't have finished watching this movie, and really doubt I would say much of anything about it to, anyone online or to anyone I know. I don't think Christians do good by making grumpy, superior sounding stinks about Bible adaptations falling short. So I hope that is not how this came across. We can probably just let this one go, guys, and just kind of ignore it and fall into the ether or whatever. Anyway, no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip. That's all. Just skip. This one's rated TV-14 for language and violence. And those are all my thoughts for now on Mary on Netflix. Right now, I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate. Dan Excel, Gabriel Stinson, Olin D. Branham, Winston Crutchfield, Lee Bray, Joel Nelson, Jake Berry, and Michael Cottrell. Thank you for supporting me, and SBP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Wanna hear your name in song? Check out our page on Patreon. All right. I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining over at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content over at christiangeekcentral.com. Tons of stuff made for you there as we, continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.